This is Nasha Kasha, Ukrainian Almanac. 28 minutes of stories for everyone about Ukrainian life. Nasha Kasha is heard on 18 campus and community radio stations from Newfoundland to British Columbia. I'm your reporter, Stefan Andrusiak, and this is episode 267. It was first heard in April of 2020. And I'll have an update at the end of the program. You're listening to the Winnipeg Mandolin Orchestra, among the earliest ensembles featuring mandolins in Canada, formed in the early 1920s. This selection is from a concert recorded May 9, 2015 at Winnipeg's Ukrainian Labor Temple. It's available on YouTube. Mandolins, invented in Italy, were popular in the early 20th century Ukraine, but they never reached folk instrument status there. The mandolin in Ukraine would have had to compete with native instruments, such as the kobza or the bandura. Meanwhile, in Canada, the year was 1926. 17 girls and their mandolin ensemble from Winnipeg, with conductor Philip Uhrenyuk and their chaperones, they embarked on a 33-community concert tour of Western Canada. Their playing captivated sold-out audiences. Those audiences included educators, and those educators in turn began to introduce mandolins into Alberta's school curricula. For much of this report, I reference the book Mandolin Mosaic by Marilyn Scott. It's a history of the mandolin within the Canadian-Ukrainian community, which includes 80 pages of traditional lyrics and songs. That book also tells the story of the St. Nicholas Mandolin Ensemble. In early March of 2020, I traveled to Edmonton, and I recorded this story because before you can hear the music, you need to learn to play the instrument. It is 5:30 on a Wednesday night in March. The St. Nicholas Ukrainian Catholic Church sits on Austin O'Brien Road in Edmonton, and its hall resonates with about a dozen beginners and their teacher. Yvonne Sherbin is here, holding the mandolin her father left her, the one she's now decided to master. You're here at mandolin lessons.
I sure am. I just started playing the mandolin in January. I have a mandolin. I've had it for many, many years. It was my father's. He died in 1962. My mother looked after it for a number of years before I obtained it. I've had it over 30 years. And 30 years ago, I tried to learn how to play, but I was a piano player and I couldn't wrap my brain around switching from a keyboard to strings.
Good. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm trying it again, and it's fine. It's falling into place.
How old is your mandolin?
It's over 100 years old.
Do you know the story where it came from?
No, I just know that my father obtained it from somebody somewhere and that he learned how to play, basically was self-taught. He was a diak with the Ukrainian Orthodox Church.
It's a cantor.
That's right, and he used to practice the church music on the mandolin. I grew up in East Central Alberta in Murnum. People were either Ukrainian Catholic or Ukrainian Orthodox. Pretty much most, if all, not all people were of the Ukrainian community. So it was one of the Ukrainian settlements established when people came to Canada. But it was my grandparents that came, so I'm third-generation Canadian.
And what did you do professionally in your life?
I was basically an educator and a coordinator of educational programs, and I still am in the workforce between jobs right now. But now, since 2010, I've been in the volunteer engagement field. I moved to Edmonton with my mother and brother after my father died, so from grade 3 up, I was in Edmonton. This is a newfound skill set for me. The only role it played was that influence from my father playing it. I have vague memories of him playing it, and I'm wanting to learn because I have his mandolin. I don't think I would play if I had a different mandolin.
Alice Mucha is a mandolin veteran. She just may be the longest-serving member of this ensemble. Which year was this in that you started?
1979, September. Father Giaggio started this ensemble. He announced it in church that there's going to be mandolin classes. I didn't know who was going to be instructing, so I phoned his residence, and Dobrodicha told me that Father's going to be teaching. And I said, immediately I came here, but I didn't even have a mandolin at that time. I just came to see what was going on. And that's where he drew 5 lines on the board and another 4 lines below it. And he was showing us which note goes where on each string. And that's how I started. I've been playing ever since. I had to learn to read notes. I've enjoyed every moment of it.
Did you get any better?
Oh, I sure hope so. I think so.
So would you be a virtuoso at this stage?
Well, I could wing it if I had to. Well, I do play other instruments. I play an accordion and an organ. But the mandolin provides me the camaraderie with our members, other members, and it's a very social thing as well. And I find it very rewarding and very relaxing. It's an escape.
There's a woman named Yvonne, and she's just started playing with the beginners. What advice would you give her?
Persevere and practice at home as much as you can, so that you get. What happens, the most problem that I had is my fingers didn't have any calluses, and so my fingers hurt. So you have to keep playing until you get calluses on your fingertips, and that doesn't hurt. We enjoy very much to play for seniors that are shut-ins, to give them a lift or to give them some entertainment. When we lost our beloved Father Giaggio, who started our group, we were in limbo for a while until we got Larry. And Larry's been the greatest thing since sliced bread, because he's made it fun. And we play a little faster now, and he's brought in new music. And it's just been wonderful.
You know what they tell me follows limbo.
Yeah, I know. One place or the other, right?
Oh, heaven.
I hope so.
Okay, here we go. Lots of tremolo, intense. Here we go. Chaban. I am Lawrence Pashek from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
I'm Marianne Pashek from Edmonton, and I'm the bass player in the St. Nicholas Mandolin Ensemble.
My childhood was in Innisfree, Alberta, which is about 25 miles east of Vegreville. My grandparents came to Canada from the Ukraine and from the Trotkiu area of Ukraine. It's not too far from Lviv, and settled north of Innisfree, and that was in approximately 1901.
And your family, your forebears?
Well, both sets of my grandparents came from Ukraine. I don't know what region they came from, and it was probably in the teens, in the 19-teens era. My mother's parents came to the New Caillou area, which is near Vegreville, Alberta, and they were one of the first farmers there, so they got that $10 bonus. They bought the land, and they had to clear it on their own, and they raised a family of 8 children, and I am from Edmonton. I was born in Vegreville, but I basically took all my schooling and have lived in Edmonton.
My dad was born in Ukraine, and he was 1 year old when they arrived. Mother was born in Canada in 1906.
How did you meet?
We met at university. We both belonged to the Obnova Club, which was a Ukrainian Catholic student organization on campus, and we met caroling.
How did you become a conductor at that young age?
Well, I was inspired by the lack of direction in our home church in Innisfree. And so I said to my mother and father, I said, what I'd like to do is I would like to start a choir of my own while I was in high school. And so because mother and dad knew most of the people that lived in and around Innisfree area, and so this one day we just took a drive around and visited with these people, and invited them to join a choir, the makeup choir that I would one day conduct, which I did. And at that time, I was sort of working on my grade 10 violin. So they thought, well, maybe he knows something about music. And they accepted me, and they were the most faithful people that I've ever encountered. At that time, I was 17.
And you found your way to Edmonton to attend university, U of A?
Yes, and it was just after that. I was only there for another year and a half longer, and then it was back to the University of Alberta. Yes, I moved on, and it was in the second year of our lovely marriage that I was invited to conduct the choir here in Edmonton at St. Joseph's Cathedral. And it was a wonderful experience. It was indeed a challenge, and a lot of uphill growth for me. Marvelous, marvelous singers.
It sounds like he became a music teacher.
Yes, we both were music teachers, first in the choral.
Oh, you were too. I knew you were an educator.
The Edmonton Catholic Schools decided to start a string program, and our supervisor, Father Leo Green, approached me to ask if I would start this group in a grade 4 class. It was completely new to me. I knew nothing about it, but he said, well, you play the violin. He said, let's start it. So I started it, and then a year or so later, Larry got into the string program, and we were both teaching strings. And we were able to combine all our groups, sometimes have 100 students at once playing.
The thing is that really nobody knew how to teach strings in a group setting.
Why is teaching strings in an ensemble setting so difficult?
Well, because of the fingering on the strings. On a piano, when you press an A, it's an A. When you want to find a C on a violin or any string instrument, you have to find the right place on the fingerboard, and it's very difficult. On a mandolin, however, they have the frets marked, but not on violin, viola, cello, bass, is with what we taught. In a class situation, all 4 instruments at one time. I taught 36 years with the Edmonton Catholic system.
I was just about 32.
Mainly in the elementary and primary grades I was in, and the strings were an extra. They wouldn't let us be the teacher of music. We had to have a homeroom classroom.
Did you have to develop your own curriculum?
More or less. We used some of the books that were already out on the market.
Well, we used the George Bornoff method, and he had a library of books, and he had a lot of success in teaching his own program. In fact, most of the players in the symphony in Halifax were trained under his system. And eventually, even in Philadelphia, there were a number of his students that played with the symphony orchestra. So the program did work. But the unfortunate part, as Marianne was pointing out, the trustees felt that it was just too expensive. George Bornoff's program meant that we would have to be taken outside of the pupil-teacher ratio, which means we were just like an extra staff member in the school.
So he would only allow a certain number of people in his ensembles.
The way it was done, we had to teach the students in homogeneous groups. For example, you'd have all the cellos together, or all the violas, or the violins. Separately, and then only at a period of time where you'd put everybody together in an orchestra to teach in that sort of a setting.
Did you and Larry perform outside of school together? You took violin as well.
Yes, we did. We would combine schools. As a matter of fact, there were about 4 schools at the time, and we combined all of them for like a spring concert. And all of us would teach the same songs, and we'd bring all the students together.
I meant you, Marianne, and Lawrence Pschick.
We did in the singing. We would sing for weddings. We would sing at senior citizens' homes. We did a lot of folk singing. Larry had a folk singing group for over 25 years.
Why didn't you play the violin together?
Because I'm not a professional violin. I took lessons for many years, but I'm not a professional violinist.
You could have taught her using the Bornoff method.
Yes, I suppose I could have, but it's like trying to teach your sibling how to drive a car, and I think you could run into some problems or some discussions that maybe better be left alone.
Baby, you can drive my car. Yes, I'm gonna be a star. Baby, you can drive my car.
to a Beatles cover by Mona and Lisa Wagner, the Mona Lisa twins. You can find them on YouTube and anywhere you buy your music.
Father Giadio was the originator of the mandolin ensemble here at St. Nicholas Church. And I believe that his first group numbered a total of 4 people when he first began. And with his persistence in a period of years, about 10 years roughly, it grew to about 12 people. At one point he says, what we need is somebody to play the bass, like a bass guitar, he said, or a guitar. And I said, Father Giadio, I said, a guitar would be okay, but that really isn't going to offer you much bass. And just by coincidence, at one of the meetings of a club that I was a member of, a fellow came in and he says, do you know of anybody that's interested in buying my bass? And I said, I'll buy it, sight unseen. So I bought that and brought it into the class.
Was this a stand-up bass or an electric?
Yes, it was an acoustic stand-up bass. And so that's how I got started playing with the mandolin ensemble. But it was just a couple of years down the road, and Father Giadio had passed away. And so the group then asked if I would conduct the mandolin ensemble at that point.
How old is the ensemble now?
This is going to be our 40th year. I've been involved for just about 25 years.
First of all, Father asked him if he'd take over the group. And he said, well, we won't have anybody to play bass. And Larry said, well, let's see if we can't get Marianne to try and play bass. He took over conducting, and I took over the bass, and I'm still using the old bass.
Here tonight?
Yes.
All set? Kolomika?
Nasha Kasha comes to you from CHRW 94.9 FM on the campus of Western University in London, Ontario, Canada. We're heard on CHMR 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland, on CKDU 88.1 FM in Halifax, on Local 107.3 FM in St. John, New Brunswick, on CJAS Radio 93.5 FM in Saint Augustine, Quebec, on CJLO 1690 AM in Montreal, on CFRC 101.9 FM in Kingston, on CFMU 93.3 FM in Hamilton, on CKMS 102.7 FM in Kitchener-Waterloo, on CJAM 99.1 FM in Windsor and Detroit, on CKLU 96.7 FM in Sudbury, on CILU 102.7 FM in Thunder Bay, on 101.5 UMFM in Winnipeg, on CJTR 91.3 FM in Regina, on CFMQ 98.1 FM in Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan, on CFBX 92.5 FM in Kamloops, on CIVL 101.7 FM in Abbotsford, and on CHLY 101.7 FM in Nanaimo, British Columbia.
We have 2 sessions of 14 weeks per year. I have been teaching mandolin here, conducting the mandolin ensemble, but we have another person by the name of Reinhard Kroller, who I hired to do the teaching. Now, Reinhard had his training in East Germany before the wall came down, and his main instrument, I believe, is the piano, but he's very competent in mandolin, violin, guitar, ukulele, and what I think is a great and wonderful advantage is that he also plays his guitar as an accompaniment with the students.
We play at schools and get the children to perform with us or to sing with us. We've played at many, many seniors' homes, nursing homes. We do a Lenten reflection celebration. We've done it in many different churches in Alberta and in Edmonton. We've played at shopping malls. We have played for the opening of Heritage Days, which is one of our biggest festivals in Edmonton. We went to a carol festival in Calgary, Vegreville, at the Ukrainian Festival, in Mundare. We've played in St. Paul, mostly in Alberta.
I find that most of these stringed instruments have a very interesting history. The mandolin probably came from Italy. The people in Europe picked it up as well, and many of the people that emigrated to Canada brought the mandolin along with them. It became a very popular instrument and a way of teaching music in schools. And so that many of the people that were playing in Father Giaggio's group and in the group that I was conducting were trained in the schools while they were little kids. It has a long history. Most of these stringed instruments emanated from the lute. The mandolin itself has 8 strings, and it's tuned like a violin, and it has the same kind of fingering. The only difference the major difference, of course, is that the mandolin has frets, the violin doesn't have frets. But it's not a very loud-sounding instrument, and I suppose the designers considered adding that extra double string for each of the tones. I was inspired by my uncle, Uncle Harry, who played the violin. And I started, that really caught my interest, and I began playing when I was 6 years old. And my first instrument was actually carved out of an old cigar box by my grandfather. You can well imagine it didn't play like a violin. And my ambition was to get a real violin.
Well, when I was younger, in my young teens, I always wanted to sing Ukrainian folk songs. When they had these weddings at the national halls and everywhere, we were always allowed to come with our parents. And there was always a couple of uncles that led folk singing. And I always wanted to learn these songs. Well, at 14, we all went to Pigeon Lake to summer camp, and they gave us a songbook, a folk singing book, and that started it. Then shortly thereafter, I was asked to join the church choir at 14 because my mother couldn't go. She was too busy. And I loved it, absolutely loved it. And we just kept on from then. And every chance we had, we would sing folk songs. Everybody'd take out their guitars and accordions and play. And we did that with the folk singing group for 25 or 6 years. Once a month we'd sing. And the music has continued. And then I thought, when he took over the mandolin group, well, we can be together. It's something we can do at the same time. And so I took the bass, and I'm still here.
That first time you met, he was supposed to be directing the choir. Instead, he was paying attention to you.
No, it wasn't quite like that. We were all as a big group, and then we split into small groups. And my 2 friends, who I hung out with all these years, said, "You 2 are coming with us in the car." And they said, "Larry, you're coming with us." And that's how it started. The 4 of us, plus 2 others, went Christmas caroling. Very good friends, and they're still friends to this day.
I had a crazy thought just the other day in regards to music and musicians. Music is really important in our lives. It's important at every stage of our life, every age. And I've seen people who have played when they were little children and were just wonderful musicians, and others who have played when they're in their 80s or even in their 90s. And so music is there, it's in people. But here's the problem. Musicians are struggling because they have to end up doing a lot of traveling nowadays to be a success. Even there's a change in the way music is being marketed and sold. And so they have to find a means of doing it themselves. And that's kind of unfortunate because there are musicians, and some that I know of in particular, that have given up. But I think that really the society should provide, just like they did years ago in the days of the lords and the people who lived in these large castles, and they would hire the muse to entertain. Now, they were taken care of in those days. I think that the society should be doing the same thing for talented musicians, to provide them with a living so they wouldn't have to worry about where the money is coming from, that their job would be to entertain and to bring music to the public.
Maybe not in Alberta, but in other provinces, when school boards get into trouble, music and drama are the 2 classes that are first to go.
It's the same here.
Music is so important to be taught in schools. Many people are of the opinion that these kids should be taught privately. They should have private lessons, so on. But schools provide every child with an opportunity to be introduced into music, and you never know which of the children that would normally not be exposed to music might be a real star. And I have a case, I remember, this is only one situation, but there are many, where this person who was in my cello class, and, she would sit there with kind of an interesting kind of a posture, maybe that I would want to comment on, but I thought, she seems to be so engrossed with the music. She's playing in tune accurately. And I thought, well, she has some special talent. Well, ultimately, in the end, the program stopped. And maybe I shouldn't even mention this, but she asked me, what do I do with the cello? And I knew that all of the instruments were going to be sold at approximately 10 cents on the dollar. And I thought, well, I tell you what. I said, you know what? You keep that cello for as long as you need it and use it. She continued with her lessons, ended up in Juilliard, and she's played in Canada, United States, in Europe, and her beginnings was right in school.
Do you know her name? Do you remember her name?
Yes, her name was Marina Hoover.
Grammy nominee Marina Hoover, born in Edmonton, was the founding cellist for the St. Lawrence String Quartet. She would complete a master's degree at Yale, garner university teaching positions in music. She now resides in the Chicago area. On the last Wednesday of this July, after not playing since March of 2020, the St. Nicholas Mandolin Ensemble is planning a meeting with a short practice. Social distancing and masks will be required. Welcome back, everyone. Happy strumming. I wish to gratefully acknowledge that partial funding for Nasha Kasha is provided by the Shevchenko Foundation and the Ukrainian Credit Union. I'm your reporter, Stefan Andrusiak. New Pathway Ukrainian News delivers news and insight every week in English and Ukrainian. Subscribe today at newpathway.ca. Back in a week, God willing. До милої зустрічі за тиждень часу, дорогі слухачі.